All right, let's go ahead and begin with prayers. As usual, we're just going to do. Can everybody hear me okay, by the way? Is the volume all right? Okay, good. Just wanted to check. So, all right, we'll begin with this praise to Shakyamuni Buddha. And again, we're just going to do this one time before these classes. But as I've said before, bring to mind all the amazing qualities of the Buddha, but moreover, think about the fact that you have the potential to develop these same qualities. This is not something that is unattainable that we're thinking about in regard to the Buddha. It's something we actually can accomplish. To the founder, the endowed transcendent destroyer, the one gone beyond, the foe destroyer, the completely perfected, fully awakened being, perfect in knowledge and in good conduct, Sugata, knower of the world, supreme guide of human beings to be tamed, teacher of gods and human beings, to you, the completely and fully awakened one, the endowed transcendent destroyer, the glorious conqueror, the subduer from the Shakya clan, I prostrate, make offerings, and go for refuge. And we'll do the short mandala offering. This ground, anointed with perfume, strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, four continents, the sun and the moon. I imagine this as a Buddha field and offer it. May all living beings enjoy this pure land. Idam Guru Ratna Mandalakam Niryata Yami. Then refuge and bodhicitta. As usual, we'll do the first time in English just to bring these words into our mind, words of refuge in the first two lines, and then cultivating the motivation of bodhicitta with the last two lines. And we'll also, as usual, meditate on that motivation. But let's do this the first time in English, and then twice chanting the Tibetan. I go for refuge until I am enlightened, to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings. Sangye chodang soke choknam la jangchu pardu dakni kyapsu chi daki chunyen gi pe sanam gi dola penchu sangye dupar shok. Sangye chodang soke choknam la jangchu bardu dakni kyapsu chi Daki chunyen gi pe sanam gi dola penchir sangye dupar shok. Let's do a short meditation. Give ourselves a chance to focus the mind a bit. Let go of whatever distractions we might have from our day. And then we'll set our motivation together. So again, the first few minutes just spend in silent meditation, focusing on the breath, whatever way you prefer to work with the breath. And then I'll come in and lead you in setting motivation. So we can begin now. So, to set our motivation for tonight, let's recall from the last teaching 2 weeks ago, we were looking at how we correctly rely upon our spiritual teachers. And one of the points that we looked at was how we rely upon them in terms of our actions. And as you probably recall, the most important of the actions we can engage in relation to our gurus is to follow their advice. You might recall that just coming here to these teachings, studying the Lamrim, all the things we do in cultivating some understanding of these topics, our study, our meditation, our discussion, all of this is a way to please the gurus, to follow their advice. This is the best way for us to rely upon our teachers. Because this is really what they want for us. All the Buddhas, all the holy beings, want nothing more than for each of us to develop our own minds and hearts, all the way to the state of enlightenment. And just take a moment, pause, and just reflect on that, and just how being here tonight is an offering to the Guru, an offering to the Buddhas. And because they want us to develop our minds fully to attain the state of Buddhahood, it's important that we generate that motivation of bodhicitta. We seek to become a Buddha, not for our own sake alone, but for the sake of all beings, motivated by love and compassion for all beings, and recognizing that we have the potential to help them in unbelievable ways if we do develop ourselves fully. So we set our sights on accomplishing Buddhahood with the primary aim, the main objective, which is to be able to benefit countless sentient beings, to lead them out of samsara, their unenlightened state, all the way to liberation and enlightenment. It's for this reason that we've gathered here together tonight. And hold that motivation very firmly in your heart. And then you can open your eyes fully, and we'll begin. Okay, so again, 2 weeks ago we had that class, the final one, on the subject of the spiritual teacher. And recall that the way that our text is set up, there were all these kind of introductory teachings about the greatness of the text, the greatness of the author, and so on, how to listen to and explain the Dharma. And then we started going into the actual topics, which begins with the spiritual teacher. And we have one more kind of main Dharma topic in terms of things that we meditate on and try to gain realizations of, which will be the perfect human rebirth. And we're going to come back around to that after we talk about a very important topic, which is what we begin tonight. And I may take more than the 2 classes I've allotted for this topic because it is a rather lengthy topic, one that hopefully we've all had some instruction on before, which is how do we conduct a meditation session? It's really important if we're going to gain realizations that we do that in the best way, the proper way, so that we actually can accompany our meditations on the Lamrim, which are, as I've been mentioning, extremely important. It's really the heart of our path. So if we're going to do that, how do we make the most of that? What are the things that we need to have in place to allow that to be a very profitable activity in terms of our generating good merit and gaining realizations and so on? So you might recall, if I go to the text, let me pull the text up on my screen. This is the chapter that we had here. And actually, if I go back just to the beginning of the previous chapter, you'll see that there was this 2 points within this, the stages by which a student should be guided through the actual instructions. So this is really the rest of the text, right? Everything that we're going to be studying are the actual instructions on gaining realizations of the Lamrim. And recall that that had 2 points. The first one was relying on a spiritual teacher, the root to the path, which again we covered in the last 2 classes. And then the second one we begin tonight, which once more will then cover the remaining duration of this entire course through next year sometime, whenever we finish it. And it says the stages of training the mind once you have relied on a teacher. So the implication here then is that the teacher, as we've been talking about, is the foundation of all of our learning and developing and realization. And so once we have a proper state of reliance and once we are dedicated to engaging in that, then we need to know what we do with that. What are the steps that follow from that? And of course, it's everything that we learn in the remainder of the Lamrim. And to proceed this, though, of course, as I was saying just a short while ago, we need to know how to meditate on the Lamrim. We need to have that ability and that expertise, if you will, so that we make sure that our, again, meditation leads to the results that we want. So we're essentially going to be beginning, and again, I had 2 classes set up for this. We'll see how it goes. I may be able to finish it in 2, but I have the feeling it might take a little longer. So the condensed presentation of how to practice, which again was that second topic we just looked at after the spiritual teacher, this has 2 points: the actual way to practice and the need to employ 2 kinds of practice. So we'll take a look at this. The actual way to practice, we begin tonight. And this has 2 points: what to do during the meditation session itself, and what to do in the periods between sessions, which we won't be getting to tonight, but we're actually going to be looking at, how do we conduct a meditation session? So what to do during the meditation session itself, we see that that begins with kind of the 3 points that we have within that, which are first, what to do in preparation, what we need in advance, what are called the 6 preparatory or preliminary practices that are really essential to engage in before we do our actual meditation on a Lamrim topic. What to do during the actual meditation session, which is what we will probably start with next week. I don't think I'll be getting anywhere near that topic tonight. And then what to do at the end. So we're talking about, again, the actual session and what we engage in during that. And the preparations that we do for it are very, very important. So most of you have heard of these 6 preparatory or preliminary practices. It says there, engage in the 6 preparatory practices that are presented in the biography of Sir Lingpa as follows. Recall, Sir Lingpa is one of Lama Atisha's root gurus. So this was advice that Sir Lingpa gave to Atisha. And it's really quite touching when you think about these, the things like, again, this is not just what the Buddha taught, but especially 1,000 years ago when Atisha formulated the Lamrim and gave this instruction to his disciples that he received from his guru. So we're in, once more, this unbroken lineage of amazing teachings that we are still following. So these 6 preparatory practices are not to be neglected. I know that we always used to joke over in the master's program that when you hear the word preparatory, most of us in the West think, oh, I don't need to do that. I'm ready for the actual stuff, right? But we shouldn't think that way, because it's not that the preparatory practices are kind of leading us into the actual meditation in a sense. The actual meditation session is a unique part of it. It's where we will actually look at the topics that we are studying. And we've already been doing that, hopefully, with regard to the spiritual teacher. And you've been hopefully meditating on that. But the preparatory practices are what kind of prepares our mind to gain realizations. If we don't engage in those, then we can do the actual meditations, but it's just not as fertile. You don't have the potential for those seeds to be planted and for everything to grow as richly and as quickly as it would without the preparatory practices. So don't think that preparatory means, oh, that's for remedial stuff, and I just going to jump right to the real practice. These are all extremely important, and they all play a particular role. They're abbreviated greatly in regard to our presentation in the middle length Lamrim. So I will be augmenting this with a bit of teaching as well as a few passages to share from various books. The very first one is set out as cleaning your dwelling. And by dwelling, they don't mean your entire house. You don't have to clean your entire house every time that you meditate, but particularly the environment that you are meditating in. Your shrine room or You could call it a gompa, certainly, gompa meaning place of meditation. But you have some dedicated space, hopefully, for your meditation. And secondly, as part of this first one, arrange your representations of the exalted body, speech, and mind. So again, I put a little note on there about reminding me, but also so you know that I did put another handout, put several of them out on the Google Drive today. One of them is called Basic Instruction for Altar Setup and Water Bowl Offerings. So let's go to that because again, I think that that's something that I do share generally with people in discovering Buddhism in Module 8, where we talk about establishing a daily practice. And again, I would hope that most of you already have pretty good instruction in terms of setting up an altar. And then the next point we're going to get to in terms of the making offerings, water bowl offerings in particular, but I'll touch on some of those. And you have this wonderful handout that is drawn from an FPMT booklet that you can also obtain if you wish, and that gives you even more instruction on water bowl offerings. But essentially, I've put together the essential points of this so that you have something that you can refer to. And again, that's because I usually do this for the module of Discovering Buddhism. So in terms of an altar, as it says here, it's really good to have a dedicated space, and it gives some idea of what you might all have in that space. A small table, a cushion, whatever. If you're going to sit in a chair, that's perfectly fine, but just keep in mind, that's not always the ideal posture, but it certainly can be done. If we have physical limitations and we need to sit in a chair, that's fine. You just set up your space with that in mind. Then in terms of the arranging what is on the altar, well, it doesn't mean that every time that you come into your meditation space, you have to rearrange your objects. You don't put them away and then bring them back out and arrange them. You would initially arrange objects on an altar, and those objects on an altar are essentially representations of either the three jewels is one way of talking about them, or the three aspects of a Buddha's experience, which are the Buddha's holy mind, their holy speech, and their holy body, their physical presence. So the idea is that these three objects are the minimum to have on an altar. Well, they say if you have just an image of the Buddha, that is good enough if you don't have anything else other than that image. But essentially, the image of the Buddha represents the body of the Buddha, and of course also represents the Buddha jewel of the three jewels. Then you're going to have to your left, as you face the altar, to the right of the Buddha, a representation of the Buddha's speech, which is a text. And usually it's good to have a text that is representing the perfection of wisdom, such as the Heart Sutra. This is the most profound teaching that the Buddha gave, so something that is representative of that. But if you have a Lamrim text or any other text, it can be in English, it can be in Sanskrit, it can be in Tibetan, it doesn't really matter. It's just a text that will represent the Buddha's speech. And in terms of the three jewels, that represents, of course, the Dharma. So it's the Dharma jewel represented by the text as well as the Buddha's speech. To your right, to the left of the Buddha, that is on your altar, is a stupa. And most of you know stupas. I don't think I need to explain one. They're essentially reliquaries that are very holy objects. Many of our centers have stupas on their grounds, and we can certainly just take a picture of one of those, and you can have a picture there. If you want to get a small, a satsa of a stupa, these little Pastor Paris kind of statues, you could do that, or you could even go to some of the online stores and buy a metal stupa or something of that nature. But just a picture is adequate as well. And that represents the Buddha's mind, the holy mind of the Buddha. And it's this, wait, let me think. That's the Sangha then? Yeah, I think that's the Sangha jewel. I mean, I have to go back to it just to make sure. Because, yeah, the Dharma jewel is obvious, and I think the Buddha jewel, the Buddha statue. Let's go back to our thing here and the instructions that I put together. So it says there, yeah, the scripture representing the speech of the Buddha, the mind of the Buddha, the stupa. And then it should say down below here, in terms of them representing the three jewels. If there's only a statue, as it says there in the middle of the screen, think that it represents all three jewels. If there's also a scripture and a stupa, though, think that the stupa represents the Buddha, Okay, so it's the stupa representing the Buddha, sorry. The scripture representing the Dharma, and the image of the Buddha representing the Sangha. That one's not one that I think about that often. I usually think about body, speech, and mind. So sorry, I kind of inverted those two. So again, the image of the Buddha is the Sangha, and the stupa itself is the Buddha. But again, if you're looking at it from the perspective of the three aspects of a Buddha's being, then it's the other way with the body, speech, and mind represented, as I mentioned earlier. So again, the reason why you have these objects is they're really there to act as sort of a placeholder for the beings that you are thinking of, and they do have a holy quality to them. They say that essentially they are, in essence, our gurus manifesting in those sorts of physical forms. But it's to represent the objects that we are going to in regard to our taking refuge and generating merit, accumulating merit through the various practices, using as kind of a support for all of that. And they're really there to inspire us. So it is good to buy objects or obtain objects or have photos of objects that really do inspire you, that bring some joy to your mind when you come into your meditation space. Now, having said those three main objects, it doesn't mean that you shouldn't have any other objects. If you do have pictures of a guru, someone who you do consider to be your spiritual mentor, they actually say that those should be higher than these three objects. They should be at the highest level of your altar. If you do have an ability for them to be at multiple, have like multiple shelves or something, they would be on the top shelf. If you have a single shelf, then just try to raise them up through having them on maybe like cloth covered boxes or something kind of nice that is a bit of a throne for them to be a little bit higher than the other objects. It also is good to raise those three objects a little bit higher than the base of the altar where you're going to be making offerings. If you're going to do water bowl offerings or any other offerings. They should be, all of your holy objects should be elevated just slightly. And it doesn't have to be huge. You can elevate them more if you want, but anything in that like an inch to 3 inches, 6 inches is plenty to kind of raise them up a little bit, once more representing your admiration and devotion to the three jewels as the objects of safe direction and refuge for yourself. So that's the idea behind that first part, and I'll let you read the rest of that yourself to kind of fill in more details. And we'll hold on to the offerings part of it for the moment until we are ready to go to that based on the text. So let's go back to our text now. So the very first step then is, yeah, cleaning your dwelling and arranging representations of body, speech, and mind. By the way, when it says cleaning your dwelling, it is good to at least have a sort of duster of some sort to dust off the statues and the holy objects on your altar, and the surface of the altar to some degree is good to kind of go over. And at least do that. If you can also clean the floor, the area around, the entire room in terms of the things being very tidy and clean, that's said to be very valuable and very worthwhile. Let me go ahead and share a little passage from, these are some of the slides I put together for tonight. We're going to look a little bit at the benefits of cleaning. You know, when you clean the dwelling, the area where you're going to be doing your practice, these are 5 benefits traditionally that are said. And I usually don't go over these in more beginning classes, but they are there in some of our Lamrim texts, the longer texts. So I think it's worthwhile taking a look at them, and just these can also inspire us when we clean our meditation space. First, your mind becomes clear. When the environment is clean, your mind becomes brighter, lighter, and clearer. It helps prevent mental dullness and apathy. Holding a pure motivation while cleaning causes the mind to become pure. In terms of the motivation you should have, there's this story that's often told about Lamchong, I think is his name, Longchongpa. He was a very dull-witted monk who didn't really have the acumen that many of Buddha's followers had, and so the Buddha assigned him this task of cleaning the larger meditation space, the shrine room. And so he would start on like the left side, and he'd clean the left side, and all the dirt would go to the right side. And then he would clean the right side, and all the dirt would end up on the left side. Through the Buddha's kind of magical powers, he kept Lam Chongpa with a task at all times of doing this cleaning. And while he cleaned, he had these two phrases he said. The first one was to abandon dirt and to abandon stains. And the idea behind abandoning dirt is to have that thought that you are going to abandon the kind of pollution in the mind, the afflictions and all that we have that pollute our minds, contaminate them. And then with abandoned stains are like the deeper imprints that are there from having had those delusions. So that's one phrase that you can say and just say it in English. There's no problem in using the English. It's set out in some of the Lamrim texts in the Tibetan. You just say abandoned dirt, abandoned stains. I mean, so that while you're cleaning, you can be thinking about removing all of those from your own mind, but moreover, removing them from other beings' minds. Now, this is one of the ways that we enhance our bodhicitta motivation while we're doing something is to think about helping others to be purified, helping them to be free of what disturbs their mind. So that's a wonderful way to go about cleaning and to have that motivation that you're there to benefit others through even the simple activity of dusting off your holy objects in your altar. The second one is said that others' minds actually become clear. Anyone who happens to visit your abode and sees your altar, your shrine room, that clean place will make them feel happy and comfortable. So we should ideally have once more some part of our wherever we live. If you live in a smaller place and you can't really have an entire room or something set aside for a gompa, a shrine room, well then, at least have one area of that room that is solely for that, where you really don't, do anything but have that as your meditation space. And once more, it's something that should make you feel very happy to go to. And, so it can also, having a clean place can inspire others, can kind of bring that same sort of lightness and happiness to them. It's said that it delights the gods. The various levels of gods are naturally inclined to help and protect practitioners of Dharma. However, they are not attracted to an unclean environment. It's said that in these god realms, they have pretty pristine bodies and what have you. They don't have the grosser forms of bodies that we have that sweat and don't smell so good after a number of days and whatever. Their bodies are always very fresh until they get to their death. We'll see that later on in second part when we look at the different sufferings of the beings in the various realms. They do have an unpleasant odor that happens in the last part of their life. But while they are living their lives as gods, everything is very clean, pristine, very delightful. So they're delighted when they see our clean rooms, and they're, unable to help when they aren't attracted to a place because they don't like to enter an unclean place. Also, gurus, Buddhas, bodhisattvas, protectors of Dharma are pleased by and feel at home in a clean environment. If you think about it, if you were going to have, somebody over who was a very important person and you were maybe looking to do a business deal with them and wanting them to, feel good about who you are and everything, you wouldn't bring them into a house that's all disheveled with, stuff lying all over the place. You'd want to present something that would be very, appropriate for them to invite them into a place that they'd feel good about, coming in. You don't want to make it too much of a bribe. We'll talk about bribery later when we talk about getting offerings, not through any of these wrong means of livelihood. But if you just want to help somebody to, feel good. Imagine if you were going to host your guru or an important teacher at your home. You would want them to feel very comfortable there, right? And feel like the environment is in line with their presence and with, inviting them into that. So that's the idea. We're going to be inviting Buddhas and Bodhisattvas and all these amazing beings into our holy space. So it's important that we please them. You create the cause to be beautiful. Cleaning the house, just like practicing patience, which we'll see in the third part of this course on the Lamrim, when we look at the Bodhisattva practices, the six perfections. Patience is said to create the cause of having a beautiful form and, pleasing appearance, what have you, nice clothes, all of that. Cleaning the house can be a similar activity that creates that type of karmic result. And this is not just physical beauty, Geshe Loden says in his book, but the beauty of being adorned with pure morality. So again, this is the product. If we work with cleaning, we're working with purifying. We're working with that kind of energy that helps us to purify our morality, purify our behavior. So all of these things are interrelated. We can't think of them only as just a task of pulling out a duster and waving it around on our altar, but it has a real purpose. The purpose is to help us to have that purification going on in our own minds. Fifth and last, you create the cause for rebirth in pure environments, such as the pure realms. There are said to be these pure realms, these pure lands where you can attain enlightenment in some of them. And then, of course, there are tantric pure lands where you have a strong connection to that tantric practice and are reborn there to finish your path in that domain. And it says here whether an action is positive, negative, or neutral depends on how it is motivated. Even cleaning the house, if done with the motivation to cleanse the mind of negativity, becomes a virtuous action and a cause of happiness. So again, it can create these rebirths in these pure environments, pure realms. We can have kind of experiences even in the human life. If we get a human existence where we're in a much purer land, where things are more pristine, rather than some parts of the world, and even yeah, parts of our cities and what have you, where things are not so clean and more undesirable by virtue of that. So again, this is just all that first one, the first activity of kind of cleaning the room, cleaning your space, and then arranging an altar and kind of attending to the altar to some degree. Whoops, I didn't want to go back there. That came up. Go back to the text. All right. So our second one of the six preparatory practices is beautifully arranging offerings that are honestly acquired. And we're going to talk about that honestly acquired thing in a moment. And once more, I just have that little footnote on there about the same handout that I mentioned about water bowl offerings. That's in there, and we'll go to that in just a moment. I would hope once more that most of you have instructions on doing water bowl offerings, but I'm not going to give the entire, oral transmission of all the instructions. You can read the handout if you don't have that instruction, and if you have questions, certainly let me know. But as it says in this paragraph, I will read this paragraph, this first one. Offerings should be made at the altar on a daily basis. This is really something that we're encouraged to do. And if you have the time and the ability to do that, I think it's a good practice to get in the habit of doing daily. There are no limitations as to what can be offered, and there are many levels of offering. In general, one may offer any pleasing object, particularly objects pleasing to the five senses, you know, kind of visual form, a visible form that we can see, sound, music, what have you, smell, the beautiful fragrance of incense and flowers and what have you, taste, food that you might want to offer to the to the beings on the altar, and touch, tactile sensations. Maybe really beautiful cloths or things that might be pleasing to our tactile sensation. It is customary to often offer 7 or 8 bowls of water, representing from your left to right as you face the altar. Water for drinking is furthest to the left, then water for washing the feet, flowers, incense, light, perfume, food, and then the eighth one, music, is an optional one because music isn't such a tangible object. It is molecules that are going through the air that cause us to have sound registered in our eardrums and what have you. But it's not something you can point to so easily like food or perfume, light, what have you. And it says often there's no water bowl for music, as this is represented by one's voice and the musical instruments used when doing prayers. Let me move it up a little bit. Actual flowers, incense, candles, and food can be offered in their respective bowls and or elsewhere on the altar. So essentially, if you have 7 bowls and you can do the 7 substances, that are through the food, and if you have an eighth one, then you can add another one for music. And essentially in the placeholders, like if you, sometimes what people may do is they may have, like, particularly when they've got flowers in their garden, you may go cut a little bud of a flower and float it in the water that is there for the flower bowl, which would be, so it's again, water for water for drinking, water for washing the feet, water for, that represents flowers, that represents incense, that represents perfume, and then light, and you can represent that with an actual candle in rice grains that are in the bowl so that you're not floating it on the water. You just would fill the bowl with rice grains and put the candle on top. A lot of people use those little electronic candles now that you don't have to worry about a flame on your altar. And then the next last one again would be, well, after that would be perfume and then food. And for food, you can certainly put food into the bowl, like wrapped goodies or what have you, or a piece of fruit or something that is fresh. But it's good to again make those offerings as pleasing as you desire in terms of things that are beautiful for you to look at. And the idea is if they're even just all water, that's perfectly fine. You don't have to worry about, oh, I'm not putting food out or I'm not putting candles out or whatever. It can all be water. Again, all of this is explained, the ritual for doing it and the meaning behind the ritual. Lama Zopa Rinpoche, in one of his writings about these rituals that are part of the preparatory practices, he says, don't think of them as hollow ritual. They are all meditation. For example, when you are cleaning the bowls before you offer the water into them, you're said to clean them kind of 3 times with a cloth going away from you. That's to remove all of your impurities of body, speech, and mind with those 3 times. And then you do it 3 times towards you. And when you do that, kind of cleaning the bowl, you think of receiving the blessings of all the, body, speech, and mind of the holy beings. So your own body, speech, and mind are blessed. So there's all those things that are set out again in the instructions that are worth paying attention to. Um, I do have a note in there on the instructions. When Lama Zopa Rinpoche was with us, he would give the instruction to his students to keep their water bowls there all night long and not to take them down at the end of the day. The more traditional instruction is to take the water bowls down at the end of the day and turn them back over, so that they're upside down. And then in the morning, you do your water bowl offering, starting by cleaning and incensing the bowls and then filling them with water and so on. But with Rinpoche, I mean, he was always having in his mind offering all of the offerings that his students offer, which isn't, it's totally fine. We're happy to do those for Rinpoche to offer our offerings and as part of his mental offering process. And, so Rinpoche gave the advice not to take them down. So essentially you've got, offerings of water on your altar are pretty much around the clock, other than that little period where you've taken and emptied them and then you put in fresh water. But I think you can continue to do that. I have not heard any instruction that says you shouldn't do that. But again, the more traditional way that you might see people doing is to, at the end of the day, before you go to bed, emptying the water bowls and then again putting them upside down. One thing I'll point out that's in the instructions is don't ever put an empty bowl on your altar without, make sure there's something in it, even just a little bit of water. And the reason for that is that it's like offering nothing, So essentially, you don't want to kind of create that pattern of kind of something there that is empty, that is not containing at least some substance, water or what have you. It's a very rich practice. It is called one of our preliminary practices. Venerable Angie, who many of you know, was doing water bowl offerings down at Lama Zopa Rinpoche's house in Aptos, California, for many years, and it's really a very wonderful kind of merit-making and purifying kind of practice because you're working with water all the time. There are some parts of the world where water is much scarcer than others, and so if that's the situation you have, well, keep in mind that you can use that water for other things. I remember at Tupten Oberling at one point many years ago, we had, when Venerable Angie was there, we were using the filtered water that people use in their tea to put on the altar, and then it would go back to be in pitchers so people could continue to use it for tea and what have you. We stopped it after a while because I think it had a little bit of an incense taste to it, because when you incense the bowls, you get a little bit of that residue in there. But it's perfectly fine to give it to birds or to animals. It's just not meant to be something that you kind of step over or treat with disrespect. That water can go into gardens and pots, flower pots and what have you, and be used to take care of all of our wonderful greenery that we have that we need in this world as well. So anyway, there's more about that. Let me see if maybe I should go back to it and just make sure that I'm not missing something that I do feel I want to share. As I said, it's a number of pages that you can certainly take a look at yourself. Setting up your water bowls on the altar. Talks about using this phrase, Oma Hong. Oma Hong is representing the purified body, speech, and mind, respectively, of the Buddhas. Anyway. Yeah, it gives pretty good instruction, I think, about, and this again was taken from book that FPMT has that's mentioned at the end that you can get a PDF version of. In addition, it says there you might want to cover your mouth with a kata or some sort of covering. Now, of course, we all have face masks from the pandemic. You can certainly use those. Just anything to cover your face so you don't breathe all over the offerings. Here too, it's like if you were going to offer something to somebody, you don't just, sit there and breathe all over it. You try to keep it a ways from you and somewhat elevated. So covering your face is a way to assure that you're not doing that, not in some way contaminating the offerings. And then you present the offerings. And again, as part of this, you would certainly be able to present them in the practice that you're doing. If you're going to do your meditation practice just after, um, putting the water bowls out and what have you. And then it talks a little bit about the end of the day. And there's that note that I have at the bottom to keep the water bowls filled until the next morning before emptying them. I do have to include this. I'm sorry. I will make sure that this mantra is put on the handouts. If the food is going to be eaten, it says there in that paragraph in the middle towards the end of it, the food's going to be eaten either by yourself or anyone else. And this would probably go for if the water is going to be drunk by animals, if you're going to give it to. It's best to use the practice mantra to avert the pollution from consuming offerings. What's that all about? Well, based on Rinpoche's observation, I mean, if we're going to offer all this stuff, food and what have you, to the Buddhas, and then we just take it off the altar and consume it ourselves, it's a bit like, okay, if you brought somebody to your house and you put a plate of food in front of them, and then you decided to eat it yourself, you've offered it to the Buddhas. It's their food in a sense. They don't need the food. I mean, that's the one thing with all of this. We're making these water bowl offerings and arranging flowers and doing all these things. It doesn't mean that the Buddhas need these. This is the Buddhas being a source of us being able to accumulate merit by making these offerings. And so we want to respect that in the same way that you would if it was any other being. So if someone came to your house and you served them food, but then you took it away from them and ate it yourself, well, you need to kind of think about what that kind of karma is creating. So, what that action is doing in terms of your relationship with the Buddhas if you're doing the same thing with them. So the idea is if we are respectful of that relationship, then we want to have some means of averting any pollution from consuming the offerings that we've given to the three jewels. Because they aren't there to kind of say, "Oh, Buddha, do you mind if I have that apple? That looks really good." Instead, you just want to remove the pollution yourself. So there's this wonderful little mantra that you recite 7 times, and then you blow on the food very lightly, and the food is then free of any of that pollution for you or for any other being to partake of. So not everybody who eats it has to do that. That's just your responsibility as the person who offered it to then, remove that. And that's really all that's in that booklet. As I said, there's more that I didn't read, but you can take a look at that. The second part of this, though, second beautifully arranged offerings, honestly acquired. What does honestly acquired mean? It means that essentially you want to make sure that anything that you offer to Buddhas, on your altar, probably even anything that you would offer to a teacher, a guru, or what have you, that you've obtained that money in ways that are free of any deceit, free of any, not so healthy ways of acquiring your living. And these are pinpointed often as what's called the 5 means of wrong livelihood. So let me go ahead and share those on the screen in the slides that I have. There's a little bit of a passage that precedes that. And this is from Geshe Sopa's book. The word offering in Tibetan Chöpa also has the meaning to please. You offer the things that you enjoy. This is one thing I didn't point out earlier. If you really like, some sort of chocolate or something, and that's wonderful, then to offer it to the Buddhas first. And then again, you do the little mantra to avert pollution and you partake of the chocolate and enjoy it. But it's really useful to offer the things that you think are delightful and maybe even that you have some attachment to. It might help to relieve your attachment by giving it to the Buddhas first and then partaking of it afterwards. Then it says, since you are living in the desire realm, the things you take pleasure in are sensory objects. So you offer the objects of the 5 senses to the Buddhas, as we explained earlier in that handout. Whoops. The principle is that what you offer should be pleasing to the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. Therefore, whatever you offer should have been acquired properly without deception, or what we call the five wrong means. I'm just going to go through these briefly. These are often set out in the context of the Bodhisattva vows, which we'll be encountering much later. But those are things that we should be avoiding in terms of how we acquire our livelihood and the money that we use to pay our rent and to eat and whatever. The first one is flattery, by praising others to gain something for yourself. Oh, you're such an amazing, whatever artist, just treating people really with an abundance of compliments so that then they think better of you and might give you some of their proceeds from the sale of their art or whatever. The second one is hinting, such as saying, oh, that gift you gave me before was so nice, thereby implying that you want more. It's kind of like wink, wink, I really enjoyed the money you gave me last month. Like, get the message. So you don't want to hint because, and what's interesting is if you just come right out and ask for money from somebody, it's not wrong livelihood because you're being very honest. You say, well, I'm a bit short on my money right now. I really could use some money and I know I'm going to be tight for a while. Do you mind if you provide me with something that would help me out? People on the street who are asking for our money, they're not engaged in wrong livelihood. They're simply asking for what they need. But if you do it in these kind of circuitous ways, hinting and flattery, not so good. Bribery, often kind of referred to as, yeah, giving something small to receive something larger. A lot of stores do this, right? Come in, the first 50 people will get a little, gift or whatever. And the whole idea is to kind of butter people up. They get something nice that's really quite small in value so that they'll spend more. So if we use bribery to get things from people, not such a good idea either. And certainly not extortion or blackmail, pressuring somebody so that they have no choice about, um, say, well, if you don't give me some money, I'm going to tell everybody about what you told me last week, that whatever, those sorts of things, definitely off limits, right? And then hypocrisy. Hypocrisy is not a good thing to engage in, right? Changing your usual actions to make a good impression so that others will give you something. There's a wonderful story in the teachings on this fifth one in particular. This amazing Kadampa lineage master called Geshe Ben Kongyo. Geshe Ben Kongyo had this really clever way of working with his mind. And one of the stories is that he was, getting ready for his teacher to show, or no, not his teacher, I'm sorry, his benefactor. His benefactor was going to come visit. And he thought, well, I better make the place look really, really nice, and did all this cleaning and, got his altar sparkling, so that everything was really quite beautiful. And then he stopped and he checked his motivation and he realized that he was trying to impress the person coming in, the benefactor, so that the benefactor would give him more money, and continue to support him. So then he took like ashes or dirt or something and threw it all on his altar. And he said, okay, that's what my motivation is. My motivation is kind of garbage. So anyway, the story kind of exemplifies how we really shouldn't put on airs with people. If we kind of put forward a front that we're this amazing practitioner and we're also wonderful and what have you, and then other people think so much of us, not good. It's better to be much more honest about, what our actual qualities are and not have any pretense around, our abilities. And if we're trying to impress others to especially gain their favor and to get money from them, well, then this is a wrong way to go about acquiring our resources. Um, let me take a look at the chat box before we go back to this, just because I don't want to get. There are two questions there. If we have pictures of deities on our altar, where should they be placed? Actually, if you have tantric deities, I think they said they're kind of the next level below the gurus, so they are generally above the other figures. Um, and then, can someone type the mantra to avoid pollution? Ah, you got it in there. Okay, wonderful. Thank you for putting that in there, Mary. Um, Verbally say it. Tayata idam vini ratna pemani pranani swaha. Yeah, and again, you say that 7 times. Tayata idam vini ratna pemani pranani swaha. There was a different version of it that was pronounced a little bit. The phonetics were different, an earlier version, but yeah, that is the correct one that I use when I'm blessing food that I've offered or water again that I'm going to offer to any other beings. Okay. All right. Let's go back then to, I think that covers all my slides. I don't think I have anything else left on that. Um, oh, I did want to go through this. This is kind of a nice little thing. Again, I try to complement some of the teachings that are not normally in a more introductory course. But whenever you offer water, Geshe Loden says, always try to make it pure water. The Buddha taught that the best offering water has 8 qualities. When such water is offered, each quality is the cause of a particular result. We're getting, so far we've had a zillion lists of numbers, right? 8 this and 4 that and 5 this. And so here's another list. But it is good, even if you can offer purified water that you've gotten. I know it's not good to get bottled water necessarily. Maybe use those larger bottles that you can keep reusing and what have you. But yeah, because all the plastics in our world, but nonetheless, it is good if you can do purified water or water that goes through your own filter that you have on your sink uh, faucet, or that you have something Brita filter kind of thing or what have you. Offering cool water is a cause for pure morality. Offering delicious water, water that tastes really good, is a cause for having delicious food. Offering light water, I'm not sure what they mean by light water. I guess you can have heavy water, light water, I don't know. But it's a cause for having the bliss of physical and mental suppleness, that is, a sort of lightness of the mind and body. So, yeah, water that's light in nature, I don't know. Offering soft water is a cause for having a gentle and peaceful mind. Offering clear water is a cause for a clear mind. Offering water with a sweet smell is a cause for purifying negativities. Seventh, offering water which is not harmful to the stomach is a cause for being free from illness, and offering water which does not harm the throat is a cause for a sweet voice and good speech in the future. So just kind of a sweet little thing to keep in mind. You don't have to memorize those necessarily and kind of work with them, but the idea is that if we have some awareness of what water are we actually using to make those offerings and trying to do the best that we can, offer the best substances. It's just, again, our minds. Everything is working with our minds. These are not, even though they're external things of putting water in bowls and what have you. The main thing is, what are we doing with our minds? Are we offering the best that we can, given our own situation, to the beings that really matter in our lives? The 3 jewels that we depend upon on this spiritual path. So those are the things that we're trying to be mindful of in regard to that second one, making sure we've acquired the offerings in an honest way, and then also, yeah, doing the water bowl offering practice if you can with pure water and what have you. The third of the preliminary or preparatory practices: on a comfortable seat, straighten your body and assume a suitable lotus or half lotus posture. Now, again, some of us can't do either of those, and I'm one of those people, and you have to do kind of the best that you can given your physical situation limitations. And there are a number of elements of posture that I'll point out in a moment. That's what my little note is here that I've actually attached or put out on your drive, the Google Drive, something on the 7-point meditation posture that comes actually from Buddhist Meditation 101, the FPMT course. It's an introduction to meditation. I think all of you know those 7 points, but I'm just putting them out there in case you don't. But again, then after that, so you sit comfortably on your chair with a straight body, upright body, and then make sure that your mind is suffused with refuge and bodhicitta. These are your initial thoughts that really do feed your motivation and the aim of your practice. So let me just point out that handout in case you're curious. I don't need to talk about it so much, I think, because I would hope that most of you have some. Whoops, that's not it. That's not it. Let's see. Well, maybe I didn't put it there. I know what I can do. I can stop sharing, and then I can go to the Google Drive where I do have that drive open for tonight, just in case there was anything I needed to share that I didn't have up. So again, I have it in the charts and other handouts folder. And you'll see there that there's this one, the 7-point meditation posture right there. This is kind of a nice one because it has some pictures. The one thing I will point out while we're on this first set of pictures around the legs is that this third one, it says a third alternative is to simply sit in a normal cross-legged position with the feet resting on the floor under the opposite thigh. This is extremely uncomfortable. And you're going to have your feet going to sleep and going to experience some pain and problems with it. There's what's called the Burmese posture, which is a fourth alternative, I suppose. You could use that third one if you wish. But in that, the lower parts of your legs, your calves, are kind of parallel. So they're not crossed like this and underneath your buttocks. Instead, they're kind of out, extended a bit. And some people can't do this posture, but I was able to do it for quite a few years, and now I've got some knee problems, so it's kind of difficult for me to sit on the floor for very long. But if you have an ability to get the feet like this, and then to change them, all you do is you just kind of move the other one in front of it. And so you never have anything on top of those parts of the leg or your knees, so that you actually can rest pretty well in that posture. Now, when you get into these postures, rather than the full lotus, you do need to raise the buttocks quite a bit so that you have a downward slope to the knees. Your knees shouldn't be suspended up in the air. They should actually be resting on the ground. Otherwise, you will have knee problems. Take it from me. So, so that's again maybe all I need to say about posture. I'll just go through the handout here to point out the main elements. There are 7 of these points you need. The back should be straight but relaxed. Shoulders and hands, those are 2 points. The shoulders are being relaxed downward and a little bit of space between the arms and the body. And then your hands in your lap in the posture that's shown there, the meditation posture with the thumbs lightly touching, kind of forming the shape of a flame or a triangle of some sort. And then the head should be slightly inclined forward. It's interesting, I've seen pictures of His Holiness meditating, and his head seems much more further inclined than this picture. But, it's really up to you. You don't want it too low so that the mind becomes dull, but if you have it too high, you might have more distraction and mental wandering. The jaw, mouth, and tongue are kind of put together, that area. Make sure that's very relaxed with the tongue on the upper palate, mouth relaxed, and then the eyes. And again, the advice generally is to keep the eyes slightly open if you can. If you need to close them, though, that's all right for initially. But it's actually said that it's good to keep the eyes slightly open because when you engage in visualizations, which we do bring into some of our meditations, and it's a key part of Tantra, then you want to be able to hold those visualizations when you get up off your cushion. And if your eyes are closed when you're meditating and visualizing them, and as soon as you open your eyes, you lose the visualization. So His Holiness gave that advice in one teaching. So I usually share that so that you get in the habit of having the eyes slightly open. Okay, so that is the first part of that, and I don't know that I need to say much more. I mean, refuge and bodhicitta, there's some wonderful reflections on this that you can find in the Lamrim text. These are 2 important thoughts that, again, are encapsulated in the refuge and bodhicitta verse that we do before the classes, and that is also in the practice materials that I put together for you. I might mention that. I think I alluded to it previously, but there is a set of practices, prayers that I put together for your use if you wish, though you can use whatever you have. This is just a couple of pages of recommended prayers for use with Lamrim meditations. And there's the refuge verse that has refuge in the first 2 lines and bodhicitta in the other. They change it slightly from the one we use for teachings because you're not listening to teachings, you're engaging in other practices, giving and other perfections. And again, this goes into the other prayers that you could accompany all this with, and we're going to talk about the 7-limb prayer shortly. But essentially, yeah, this is one way, again, to articulate refuge and bodhicitta. But don't let it just be, okay, I'm just going to sit down in my cushion and just rattle out the refuge and bodhicitta verse 3 times. You really should think about refuge and bodhicitta before you say it, so that the words have some power to them, have some meaning to them. They are meant to be expressing what is in your heart, what is in your mind at the time. So do reflect on refuge and bodhicitta. The 4th of the 6 preparatory practices is in the space in front of you. Imagine the lineage gurus of vast conduct and profound view, as well as countless Buddhas, Arya Bodhisattvas. Arya Bodhisattvas are the ones who have realized emptiness directly. They are the ones who are on their way to removing, they've begun the process of removing obscurations in their minds to become a Buddha. Shravakas are the hearers, those of the Hinayana lineage that practice that path that leads to individual liberation, and the Pratyeka Buddhas, the solitary realizers, who also practice a path leading to individual liberation. along with those who dwell in the Buddha's words, all those who have that kind of connection to the Dharma and are holy beings in that way. And it says there, thus visualize the merit field. So the fourth one is essentially visualizing what we call the merit field. The merit field is called such because it is a field in which you're going to cultivate merit. That's where you're planting the seeds of your potential that you need, this positive potential, in order to get you to enlightenment. And we'll talk more about the whole thing of accumulating merit a little bit later when we talk about the seven limb prayer. There are some instructions that are given, and they actually are quite different in different texts. So I'm not going to give maybe like a single instruction. You can use whatever is comfortable for you, and I'll even talk about how to make it perhaps even more comfortable. But the fourth preliminary practice, as Geshe Loden says, is to visualize the assembly of lineage gurus in the space in front of you. This practice of guru yoga in the context of these preliminaries will result in the accumulation of great merit. That's why we call them the merit field. All right. There are, in fact, many different ways to visualize the assembly of lineage gurus. Each different lineage has its own way of doing this kind of practice. The great masters of each lineage used forms of this visualization appropriate to their own tradition. Their systems reflect their own experiences and center around their own teachers, tantric deities, and so forth. So while there are, detailed descriptions of what should be in your merit field, those are not set in stone, and you can visualize, depending upon your own practice and your own, maybe the teachers that might have transmitted a particular or a merit field for you to visualize, you can certainly change it. All of these great masters experienced good results and achieved high levels of attainment by studying, meditating, and cultivating an inner relationship with certain meditation deities, talking here mainly tantric deities. Then they pass down their special teachings to the next generation of practitioners. So essentially, there are different versions of this that you're going to see. My teacher, Geshe Jampa Gyatso, when he taught on this merit field, this is one option. He says, first of all, there are two types of merit fields. One with Buddha Shakyamuni in the center and one with Lama Tsongkhapa in the center. And then the Lama Tsongkhapa is more common with things like the Guru Puja, the Lama Chopa. In this context, we should visualize Buddha Shakyamuni surrounded by the lineage lamas of the vast and profound to either side. You might recall vast and profound way back at the beginning when we looked at the initial verses that had Maitreya being the Buddha from whom the vast teachings were disseminated, and then Manjushri for the profound. So to either side of the Buddha are those lineages, as well as the lineage lamas of the blessing behind him. Whoops, sorry. This is from, actually, I think I got the wrong text in here. I think this is supposed to be steps. I might have to change that. I think this is Geshe Sopa. I was preparing these earlier today, a few of these slides, and I think this is from Geshe Sopa's text. I'll confirm. In the space in front of you, imagine there are two lineages of gurus. On the right side, to your left, again, the right side of the Buddha is the central figure. So to your left is a lineage of extensive activities, the vast. Again, Maitreya Buddha being the main disseminator, so he's at the top of that, and then all the other lineage masters that flowed from him kept those teachings going down to Lama Atisha and so on. On the left side, which is to your right, left side of the Buddha, is the lineage of the profound view. Again, that's disseminated by Manjushri, so he's at the head of that. The entire Mahayana path is encompassed in these two lineages of method and wisdom. And certainly just visualizing those things, Buddha Shakyamuni and those two lineages, is sufficient. But it's also even sufficient to just simply visualize the Buddha. If you don't have great creative visualization skills, well then you can work with what works for you. So on the left side is a lineage of profound view. This is the wisdom side. This lineage is connected primarily with the explanation of emptiness. From the profound view side, you learn the principal realization you need to attain liberation. Emptiness is deep, profound, difficult to understand, and difficult to explain. The teachers of this lineage have taught it in all its various aspects. It comes from, of course, Shakyamuni Buddha to Manjushri, who is regarded as the Buddha or Bodhisattva of perfect wisdom. He embodies perfect wisdom. The wisdom lineage flows from Manjushri at the top of this assembly to Nagarjuna, and then so on down to, again, Lama Atisha, who brought these lineages together. Nagarjuna himself wrote 6 treatises on the middle way philosophy, or Madhyamaka. After the Buddha, he is one of the most famous Indian teachers. So, from the point of view of emptiness, he's the main teacher. This lineage of profound view, as I just said, flows from Nagarjuna down to Atisha. But this is again Geshe Sopa, I recall, so I'm sorry I've got the wrong text up there. But you cannot reach enlightenment with the realization of wisdom alone. A sharp axe, for example, can cut down a tree, but it needs a strong handle and someone to swing it. These supporting conditions are absolutely necessary. No matter how sharp it is, the blade cannot cut the tree by itself. You can't just leave an axe on the side of a tree and hope that it's going to cut down the tree, right? So what other methods do you need to supplement the sharp weapon of wisdom so that you can attain full perfect Buddhahood? You must have the method side with all the other trainings and perfect virtues. The method side is more broad and diverse, right? It encompasses all the other teachings on bodhicitta and on the other perfections besides the perfection of wisdom. And of course, all of the other trainings in the person of the least capacity and the person of the middling capacity and so on. The lineage of extensive activities, or the lineage of the vast, as we often call it, emphasizes the vast array of practices that accomplish the accumulation of merit. It mainly transmits the methods of the Bodhisattva path for developing compassion, bodhicitta, and the cultivation of the perfections. So that is generally called the merit side or method side of the path, whereas the other side that we were talking about earlier with Manjushri and so on is the wisdom side, these 2 wings of a bird, as we've alluded to before. This lineage, the method, or I'm sorry, the method or vast, comes from the Buddha, Buddha Shakyamuni, to Maitreya, who sits on the top throne of this assembly. The lineage then passes to Asanga, and so on down to Atisha. Okay, so let's take it off here, and I will put up on the screen. I put this image out there. It is just one of the images. I think the FPMT produced it at some point. I'm not sure where they got it from, but it is a merit field that includes the Buddha. And again, you can see if you, let me see if I can zoom in on there a bit and get an idea of who's kind of at the head of these things. So again, what's said to be over on the left, the Buddha's right, this is in that upper left-hand corner, that is Asanga. And then over here, this is Nagarjuna. Nagarjuna often has like snakes over him because he went to the land of the Nagas. It's where part of his name comes from. And essentially, but that's how Nagarjuna is often pictured in that pose. So anyway, and then you have all these other beings. Again, this is kind of the ideal thing, is to be able to visualize very clearly all of these beings. And you have all these tantric beings that are in this row here. It is kind of interesting. We say to put the tantric beings on the top of the altar towards just under the gurus, but essentially, yeah, they're in this merit field. They're not there. These are all the highest yoga tantra beings there. Anyway, this is something you can use, and you can certainly print out if you'd like and have that as a reference. But as I said, most of us probably don't have the visualization skills to be able to get all those beings in our field of awareness, right? That's a lot to kind of bring into our minds. It's good to work in that direction, but not essential. Then you can just visualize Buddha Shakyamuni, just again, that central figure. And they use this phrase, all into one, versus one into many, or one into all. So you can have this, they're all the same essence. They're all the enlightened mind of a Buddha, the Dharmakaya of a Buddha. So essentially you can think of all of those different beings in the central figure of Buddha Shakyamuni, or you can think about the essence of what the Buddha is, disseminated and made into this vast number of many beings that you're, holding in your field of merit. So it's either way is fine, and I think it's really important that we're sort of comfortable with what we're doing so that we're not driving ourselves crazy as we're trying to meditate on these things. Most important is that you have the conviction that you are in the presence of these beings, so that when you're visualizing them, you're holding that awareness that you are now in a space where they are. They are there as a field of merit for you to engage in these other practices. And that's what you go on to in the fifth and the sixth, essentially. In the fifth of the preparatory practices, it says there, this is giving us the reason why we need to do this. This is one of the points on the homework for tonight. It is exceedingly difficult for paths, meaning changes in your consciousness, path of realization, to arise in your mind stream if the favorable conditions for their arising, which are essentially twofold, the accumulations of merit and wisdom, have not been collected, and their adverse conditions, the obstructions, have not been purified. So we get boils down to these two activities: accumulating merit and wisdom, which is here the emphasis is going to be on accumulating merit, and purifying negativities, purifying obstructions. You have to engage in those. Therefore, he says, to unite the key points of accumulation and purification, purify your mind stream, cultivate in your mind stream the seven limb practice. So I have put together one little handout that I've used previously for the seven limb practice. There's a handout on the seven limbs, and you can go through that, and I'll pull it up and talk about it here and there. But it's called seven limbs because, of course, there are seven main practices that you engage in. And let me go ahead and pull that handout up just so I can refer to it, and I will come back to it, I think, at times as well. I'm going to pull up my PDF files. There it is, seven limbs. So I have put here the seven limb prayer at the top of this. This is the one that is in that, prayers that I mentioned before. Whoops, that's right. Not there. Whoops, what am I doing there? There it is. No? Anyway, I had it up there, the prayers. I got to move this thing out of the way, and then I think, oh, recommended prayers. There it is. This is the same prayer. Reverently I prostrate, I present clouds of every type of offering, and so on. All these seven lines are lines of the prayer are the seven limbs. One thing I have to point out though is that these numbers 5 and 6 are oftentimes in different orders, and I kind of inverted the order in terms of our presentation so that our presentation accords with Lama Tsongkhapa's middle length Lamrim. In the prayer, you often have the request to remain, the supplication to remain, and then the request to turn the wheel of Dharma, in that order. Whereas in Lama Tsongkhapa's text, it's reversed. So I'm just pointing that out. You'll see 5 and 6 they're different there, but then of course they follow the text in terms of how they're laid out in this little chart. So on the left are the seven limbs that we're going to be discussing on probably the remainder of tonight because we are getting close to running out of time. Then the activities that we are involved in regard to them, and the main method that you do in terms of how you go about practicing that in your visualization and your thoughts and what have you. And then I've added something that might be interesting. I might not talk about this so much, how each of these seven limbs acts as a remedy and antidote to some of the negative states of mind or behavior that we might have engaged in, and then the benefits that we have from them in the long run to gain the infinite qualities of the Buddhas and so on, all of these various things. So that's just something you can refer to, another handout that gives you perhaps again some more information. Let's go back to starting with the limb of prostration. Whoops, that's not where I wanted to go again. Sorry. Okay, let me pull up the text right there. Got it. Okay, so Lama Tsongkhapa says, as for the limb of prostration, the prostration combining the three doors is set out in the stanza. Now, where are these stanzas from? These stanzas are from a wonderful prayer that most of you know called the King of Prayers. It's often called the prayers of Samantabhadra, the Bodhisattva Samantabhadra. Samantabhadra was one of those like Maitreya and Manjushri who appeared among the retinue of the Buddha as like the perfect bodhisattvas. And he's said to have had amazing mental powers, and we'll talk about him a little bit more in regard to offerings even as well. But in terms of prostrations, he wrote text. That text is part of the Flower Ornament Sutra, and essentially it goes through the seven limb practice in the very beginning of it. And the very first verse of King of Prayers is this one. I bow respectfully with body, speech, and mind to all the lions among men without exception, in however many worlds there are in the 10 directions. This is the general prostration using the three doors with body, speech, and mind. Then we're going to go into the individual verses that have to do with each of those three doors. So it says here at the bottom, this is not prostration to the Buddhas in just the world spheres in one direction and of one time. Rather, focusing on all the victors residing in all 10 directions in the three times, past, present, and future. You reverently prostrate body, speech, and mind to them from the depths of your heart. And then we get into the individual ones. But let me take it off here just to say what we're doing here. You can certainly engage in actual physical prostrations, which most of you know, the 5-point prostration, where you do the touching the four places and then getting down on with your hands flat on the ground with your knees and touching your forehead. Those are the 5 points, your hands, knees, and forehead. Or you can do the full prostration where you're lying entirely on the ground. Again, there's instructions for these in the booklet that's put together on the practice of prostrations to the 35 Buddhas. You could even do a practice of the 35 Buddhas right there if you had time and wanted to engage in that practice. But essentially, as you're reciting that, it's enough to kind of tuck your thumbs into your hands so that they're kind of tucked in, they're not out like that, and make this prostration mudra. This is the simple prostration mudra, and you can simply have it at your heart, or you could again touch the four places of your crown, forehead, throat, and heart. And this is said to create the causes of the Ushnisha, the crown protrusion of the Buddha, and then body, speech, and mind. So essentially, just having your hands together is good enough. You can again touch those places if you wish, but you're having the thought of numberless forms of yourself prostrating to the Buddhas, doing these full-length prostrations and kind of paying homage to the Buddha. That chart about what are the antidotes? What are they antidoting? This is antidoting our pride. It's generating that humility of bowing down before these beings because they have so much greater qualities than us, right? And so that puts us in a position where we will benefit from that. And this is part of the meaning of that, which I'll explain in just a moment. Let me go ahead and do that actually. Let me go back to my slides. I've got a few things I wanted to share on the limb of prostration. Oh, this was a little thing I wanted to add in here that has to do with the three practices that Manjushri told Lama Tsongkhapa he needs to engage in order to gain realizations quickly. And of course, this is to emphasize what we're doing in the seven limb practice, which is accumulating merit again and purifying negativities. So Manjushri replied that it was most effective to combine three vital practices. First, make heartfelt requests to your guru. We're going to see that coming as part of the 6th preparatory practice, while seeing the guru as inseparable from the meditational deity, the same essence as your yidam, your main tantric figure. Second, accumulate merit and purify negative karma. That's what we're talking about here. That's the main function of the 7-limb prayer and the mandala offering that we'll talk about later. Probably next week. Third, cultivate the substantial cause of realizations by maintaining the mind which holds the aspects of the objects of meditation. In other words, meditate on the subjects of the Lamrim and familiarize yourself with them. So essentially, you have to do three things. Make requests to your guru, do this second thing that we're talking about here, accumulate merit, purify negative karma. And third, meditate on the Lamrim. Bring those teachings to mind repeatedly, and especially in your meditation practice. So, the deities in the above visualization, seen as inseparable from your guru, are the field of merit. This field is a fertile source of all realizations, but if we do not cultivate it, we will not gain its potential benefit. And how do you cultivate it? With the practice of the 7 limbs, to purify negative karma and accumulate merit. Then, when we plant the seeds of meditation practice, they will ripen quickly into a bountiful harvest of realizations. This was a little preliminary thing getting into this 7-limb practice. Now let's talk about prostration. Whoops. Prostration, this is my teacher, Geshe Jangpa Gyatso, his commentary on the limb of prostration. He says, the Tibetan word chaksel, usually translated as prostrate or homage, in this context means I desire to attain all the qualities of knowledge, compassion, and energy possessed by all the Buddhas of the 3 times. Therefore, please bestow the qualities of your exalted body, speech, and mind. It's sort of like a request in and of itself. It's like, I'm in this position ready to receive, out of my humility, receive the amazing qualities that you possess. The qualities of a Buddha's body, speech, and mind, as well as the quality of a Buddha's enlightened activities, are set out in a text I studied in the master's program, Maitreya's text, Ornament for Clear Realizations, in the eighth chapter. Since the Buddhas have all these amazing qualities of body, speech, and mind, and we wish to attain them, we request that they be bestowed on us. This is the meaning of chaksel, of prostration. So I wanted to share that with you because I think it is important that we have an understanding of what we're doing. And prostration is not just, oh, I'm just going to get down on the ground and maybe get some exercise for the day or something. No, you're really about a mind that wants to be in the best position to receive the blessings from these holy beings, from the merit field. So let's see, we've got about 10 minutes left. Let's go ahead and go back to the text and talk about the individual limbs of prostration that pertain to body, speech, and mind. So the very first one, of course, is the physical prostration. So that's set out in, once more, the stanza from the King of Prayers. Owing to the power of prayer for good conduct, all the Buddhas directly appear to my mind. I bow sincerely to all these Buddhas, with as many bodies as there are atoms of the world. Again, I mentioned that having this image of this visualization of countless forms of yourself filling all of space. You can even make your bodies huge, large, so it covers even more ground. But you want to kind of have that visualization of physical prostrations to these holy beings. Then it goes on to say, you take all the victors in all directions and times as the object of your mental focus, as though perceiving them directly, emanating your own body in manifestations as numerous as fine particles, you prostrate to them. And having generated the power of faith and the excellent conduct of these holy objects, be motivated by that. To bow before them, again, to seek their physical qualities, the qualities of their bodies. Mental prostration is set forth in the next stanza in the King of Prayers. On every atom, as many Buddhas as there are atoms are surrounded by bodhisattvas. Everyone is absorbed in meditation on suchness. I fully venerate all of these accomplished ones. So this is the speech that you are using to make I'm sorry, the mind that you are thinking about the minds of those Buddhas, and in your own desire to attain the same mental state as them, you're mentally prostrating. Sorry, you said physical or verbal, and I meant mental there. On top of each minute particle, Buddhas as innumerable as dust particles reside, encircled by bodhisattvas, generate the faith that recollects their excellent qualities. Verbal prostration is the next verse in the King of Prayers. I extol the good qualities of all the Buddhas. I praise all of the Sugatas with the sounds of an ocean of songs, in voices of inexhaustible seas of praise. From each of the bodies emanate innumerable heads, and from each of the heads, again, innumerable tongues, singing inexhaustible praises of the objects' excellent qualities to sweet melodies. Here, songs are praises, and their voices, that is, their causes, are the tongues. The word ocean conveys a great quantity. Okay, so that's the limb of prostration. Let me see if I can go on to offerings and get that completed, and then we'll do our little break and then discussion. As for the limb of offering, the second of the seven limbs, you have two types of offerings they often speak of. Surpassable offerings, which are the offerings that we own and can offer physically that we can think of, and so on. Those are set forth in the next two stanzas of the King of Prayers. I offer these Buddhas and Bodhisattvas fabulous flowers, glorious garlands, symbols, scented balm, precious parasols, excellent butter lamps, and superb incense. I offer these Buddhas and Bodhisattvas sublime garments, supreme scents, sachets of fragrant powder equal to Mount Meru, this mythical mountain that is huge at the center of our universe, in a sense, and every wonderful thing in a splendid array. Goes on to explain these. I'll go through this quickly because I don't think we need to spend much time on it, but fabulous flowers are marvelous specimens of divine and human flowers. Glorious garlands are many different kinds of flowers strung together. Both together encompass every actual and imaginary flower. Symbols are the sounds of traditional voices. I'm sorry, traditional. Let me get it to go to the next page. Why isn't it doing that? Okay, there we go. Our traditional instruments and the like. Scented balm is a mixture of fragrant perfumes. Precious parasols are the finest of parasols. Those, I guess, represent in India really high status and so on to have a parasol. Butter lamps are fragrant, radiant lights from many things like incense or butter, as well as glowing jewel lights. Incense refers to combinations of fragrant substances and to single ones as well, single substances. Sublime garments are the finest of clothes. A supreme scent is water and the like, pervaded by a scent that fills the billion world systems with fragrance. The sachets of powder are unpackaged powders of fragrant incense suitable for scattering and burning, or the colored sand powder of a mandala in multiple layers as wide and as high as Mount Meru. Array joined at the end to all the above means a great quantity, artfully and colorfully arranged. So those are the surpassable ones because they're referring again to specific substances and things that we are, thinking of offering and sending out. Generally, we're also mainly doing in that the offerings that we have on our altar, the various substances that are represented by the water and so on. Unsurpassable offerings are set forth in the next stanza in the King of Prayers. May all these unsurpassable and vast offerings appear before all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. Through the power of faith, along with with virtuous deeds, I pay homage and make offerings to all the conquerors. Since surpassable offerings are those of worldly beings, this here is everything good emanated by powerful beings such as bodhisattvas, particularly again the bodhisattva Samantabhadra, who was known for being able to emanate this vast quantity of these pure offerings in the space before him. He would like emanate one, and that would divide into two, and then that would divide into four, and then that would divide into eight, and so on. All these like continually geometrically increasing offerings that were in the space before him. These are again surpassable offerings is everything else that we have physically arranged or can imagine in our world, and then these are something we can think about doing that. It said that these offerings emanated from the heart to Samantabhadra. We can visualize doing that, even though we don't have that power yet. The last two lines, that's at the top of there, it says, through the power of faith, along with virtuous deeds, I pay homage and make offerings to all the conquerors. Those are to be joined to all the previous couplets in order to complete them. That this is what we're doing in this entire limb of offering, as well as making reference to the prostrations. I pay homage and make offerings. They indicate the motivation for the prostrations and offerings as well as their object. So that's all I've got time for tonight. One thing, when you are doing prostrations, Rinpoche was always keen about, once more, make the prostration mudra at your heart so that you are prostrating and making offering together. And then also, it's very important to think that after you've made these offerings, that the Buddhas experience great bliss, that the merit field is totally blissed out. Now, they're always blissed out, we're not giving them anything they don't have, but we want to think about that aspect of it, that they're delighted to receive all the offerings that we are sending forth to them. Maybe I do want to share just one or two slides. I think I've got another. mm, Oh, this is from Geshe Sopa again. He says, even if you don't have anything to offer at all, you can mentally offer all kinds of beautiful objects. In his great treatise, Engaging in the Bodhisattva Deeds, Shantideva suggests two types of offerings. This is a different, maybe, subdivision. Items that have an owner and unowned items, right? Unowned items are things or places in the world that are universal or common to everyone, such as flowers, rivers, oceans, mountains, the sky. I mean, I'm here in California where they have many beautiful places like Yosemite and what have you. I can bring to mind, the beauty of those natural places and offer them. Such wild elements of nature are pure and wonderful, and they're not owned by any one particular person, right? So we can make offering of them. In the natural world, you find all kinds of beautiful objects for the eyes. The sun and moon, for example, can serve as an offering of light. There are also lovely sounds for the ears and fragrances for the nose. Right? This is all part of, again, what we have in our natural world around us. Offer like the aurora borealis or something, beautiful lights in the sky and what have you. Be very creative. Again, the things that you find delightful are important to bring to mind here in particular, and especially things you have attachment to, because you're offering them to the holy beings, so kind of giving them away. Was there any, let me see if there's a question in there. Interesting, the limb of prostration is listed as accumulation, where oftentimes, yeah, we refer to it as a purification practice. it's the thing about these practices is they have kind of both elements to them frequently, simply because we can't help but accumulate some level of merit, even when we're doing some purification. It's just they're all virtuous activities in essence, but there's some that lean more towards accumulating merit than some that lean more towards purification. Certainly, when prostrations are done in the context of reciting Vajrasattva mantra, which some people do, or certainly the confession of downfalls to the 35 Buddhas, that separate practice where you recite the names of these Buddhas and prostrations before them, then it's meant to be a purification practice primarily. But in terms of how it is set out, just as a basic practice in the seven limb prayer, it is accumulating merit. But any other questions, comments before we do our little break and discussion? So again, I hope you can stay for the discussion. I'll be joining one of the rooms because I'm on Zoom as well, though I always try to join a room and be with some folks so I can, sit with them and get to know people and hear what people discuss and talk about. So happy to do that. Let me put on the screen real quickly the questions from tonight. Now, we haven't covered everything, so you won't be able to answer all of these. So let me get that out of the way, share. Okay. So the first one, briefly identify and explain the six preparatory practices. So again, we went through the first four. We're on the fifth one, so you can work with what I have gone through. Regarding the seven limb practice, we did talk about why it is performed. You might recall that slide as well as in our text, it talks about the need for the practices that are included in there. And then briefly describe each of the seven limbs. So we've really only made it through prostration and offering, so you can go into each of those two. We haven't done the third question yet, so that'll be one we hold on to and reserve for next time that we meet. Before folks go, I know some people may need to go at this point. Keep in mind that next Wednesday I'm going to be doing some sessions at the Ocean of Compassion Buddhist Center down near San Jose. So unfortunately, we won't have class again next Wednesday. So you've got 2 weeks now. Maybe read up and work with the stuff that I put in the drive there, the altar offerings and things like that, all that kind of information. We will meet in 2 weeks, though. Then I'll be down at Land of Medicine Buddha, and I've got a Wednesday night free, so I will plan to come in for that. And then once more, we'll skip a week because I'm leading a retreat at Vajrapani, and we'll have like zero time to be able to do a class. So I apologize, but we have a little break where we're just kind of meeting every other Wednesday for a little bit. And for some of you, maybe it gives a chance to catch up on reading, to do some of the additional, reading that I can't possibly, as I've said, cover everything that these amazing teachers like Geshe Sopa and other teachers cover, Pavanka Rinpoche. So it's useful for you to go through those. And certainly if you have questions about things you see in there, bring them to the classes because I can't comment on everything there, but I can maybe answer some questions, things that I haven't been able to share because it's just, you could make this Lamrim course into many, many years if you wanted to, and I'm going to try to keep it within that year and a half at the most kind of limit, but we'll see anyway. All right. So again, those of you who do have to go, please be sure to dedicate all the merit that you've accumulated from tonight. Those of you who are staying, just take a very short stretch break, and then we'll come back in here, and Shayla will have very kindly put us into our little Zoom breakout groups, and then we'll come back 5 minutes before we conclude just to see if there are any comments or questions, and then do our dedication. All right. Okay. Well, I certainly miss these classes when they don't happen. I'm kind of sad that I can't teach next Wednesday, but we'll get back to a more regular flow when I'm back at the end of March after I'm in Santa Fe again. So hang in there until then with this every other week stuff. And let's go ahead and we put up the prayers. I forgot to tell everyone there is, I put this out there, the 8 prayers. This is a publication of the FPMT that includes the full King of Prayers, a very powerful set of prayers to do, but you will find slightly different translation, but the same verses. You lions among humans, gone to freedom in the present, past, and future, worlds of the 10 directions to all of you with body, speech, and sincere mind, I bow down. And it continues with the other prostrations and so on. But essentially, yeah, that is out there for you to access and use if you'd like. So let's recite the dedication prayers. Due to the merits of these virtuous actions, may we quickly attain the state of a Guru Buddha and lead all living beings without exception into that enlightened state. Oops, sorry, skipped a page. May the supreme jewel bodhicitta that has not arisen arise and grow, and may that which has arisen not diminish but increase more and more. I've been in the habit of, when we say this, I think I've said it the last few classes, to think about those beings who are kind of troublemakers in our world, whatever that means to you. I won't name any names, but those beings who are engaged in negativity, may they find that jewel of bodhicitta in their own hearts, awaken it through love and compassion for beings, and in that way transform their minds and their activities from harmful to beneficial. And then let's do the prayer for His Holiness. As we recite this, think that we're creating the causes for His Holiness and all of our gurus who are still abiding in this world to have good health, long lives, and all their wishes to be fulfilled. The wish-granting, wish-fulfilling jewel, source of every single benefit and happiness in this world, to the incomparably kind Tenzin Gyatso, I beseech, may all your holy wishes be spontaneously fulfilled. And then this prayer for Lama Zopa Rinpoche's reincarnation to be identified, for that being to be of incredible benefit, for everything to be auspicious, for them to benefit beings of this world and beyond this world through their presence and their guidance. Peerless teacher and assembly of the children of the victorious ones, Shravakas and Pratyeka Buddhas, victorious Losang father and sons, along with the lineage masters, all the objects of refuge of infinite lands, please bestow the virtue and goodness of accomplishing this prayer here and now. Holding and spreading the Muni's precious and complete teachings through explanation and practice, you wear the armor of patience that is never discouraged. Incomparable Venerable Guru, to you I make request, while striving single-pointedly for the sake of the victorious one's teachings, the sole gateway through which all benefit and happiness emerge, and from other living beings you suddenly departed to peace. What a great loss! Nevertheless, through the undeceiving truth of the blessings of the ocean of the three jewels, and the great waves of bodhicitta of the children of the victorious ones, may the smile of a reincarnation swiftly beam in glory for fortunate disciples. Then, as usual, it's nice for us to share this merit with beings who we're thinking about right now, those that we know specifically, as well as parts of the world where there's great suffering and strife, sending this positive energy out to those beings so it becomes the cause to immediately remove all of their suffering, and also to bring them all the causes that will help them to accomplish their true potential, complete Buddhahood. And may all beings have these same results through what we've done together here tonight, today, whatever time of day it is. Okay. Again, thank you all for joining today, and we'll see you again in 2 weeks. So hang in there, everyone. Be well, stay sane,
Thank
stay
you.
happy.
Thank you.